one of the greatest tools at our disposal in home studios or professional studios is compression. Now, compression is something of a double edged sword if you don't know how to use it properly. Overly compressed things, you're going to tell right away. They're going to sound pretty wonky. You can get a lot of pumping with things, and it doesn't sound natural. But knowing how to use the compressor, understanding what each feature does, will get you set up to nail any mix you're working on and really add some punch to those tracks. When we think about compression, we have to, again, compression squashes the sound. It squashes the signal that's coming into it. Now, squashing the sound is going to allow us to do a couple different things within the features. One, it's going to take our loudest sections, we can make them a little quieter. Now it's kind of balanced with our quieter sections, and we can move the whole volume up, and we're not going to get into clipping. Now, how it does this is it's changing the actual waveform itself. And in doing so, it's changing how we're hearing the waveform also. It's kind of like if you think about, synthesizers where you got sawtooth waves and square waves, sine waves, you're manipulating the actual waveform to get different sounds. Now, compression does the same type of thing, just not as drastically. So here in Studio One, I have just a kick drum track pulled up from one of my older songs. And let's take a look at the stock compressor inside Studio One. So here you can see we have a bunch of knobs. Now, we're going to focus, like I said, on 5 of them. First being threshold. Now, think of threshold as a fence, essentially. So you set up, at my house, I put a fence up in the backyard. We were trying to keep the dog in the backyard. Now, little jerk, once the fence went up, he hopped over it very first thing. But threshold is kind of like the fence. A lot of people, if you get into the limiter side of things, the brick wall limiter, it's the point in which you set, decibel-wise, that the compressor will engage. So if it goes over a certain decibel level, the compressor is going to say, nope, we're going back down. So threshold is pretty key depending on what you're working with here. Now, the ratio is going to tell the compressor how much it's going to go down by. So if we're looking at a 4-to-1 ratio, it can go down about 2 dB. If you're looking at a 2-to-1 ratio, it's going to go down about a decibel. If you're looking at a 1-to-1 ratio, there's going to be no compression at all. There's nothing that's happening with that. So you can really play with the ratios and see what works best for your situation and your tune and the track that you're working on. Now, the next thing we want to look at is the attack setting. Now, the attack setting is going to tell the compressor how quickly it's going to engage once your audio surpasses the threshold you set. So attack is also measured in milliseconds. And milliseconds doesn't seem like a whole lot, but in the music world, in the waveforms, the wave files, it can make a big difference for things because you can have fast attack and you can have slow attack. Now, if you have a fast attack, you're essentially telling the compressor as soon as the volume hits that threshold, it peaks over that threshold at that initial transient, we need to stop it right there and bring it back down. A slower attack, that stop it right there moment, is going to be a little bit longer. So you're going to have more of the initial sound coming in, more of the initial transient coming through. Now, the release setting does exactly the same thing, just inversely. So once the attack engages and the compression brings that volume down, once it goes under your threshold level, how quickly or slowly your release is set is going to tell the compressor, okay, we're done, and it's going to let that volume come back up. So the attack squashes it, the release lets it go. both of which work relative to the threshold that you set. Now, with everything else that we're looking at, the fifth thing that we want to look at is makeup gain. So we're squashing everything, we're setting the attack and we're setting the release. In doing so, we're cutting volume, we're cutting decibels in our source itself. We need to bring that back up. So the makeup gain allows us, like I said at the very beginning, to make our louder parts quieter, balancing close to our quieter parts, and with the makeup gain, we can move everything up without running into clipping. So let's take an example and let's look at this drum track. So this kick drum that I have here, we can listen to it real quick. Just solid rock kick drum. Now, when we look at compressors, and I'm going to grab some headphones real quick. Listening to compressors, I want to hear the compressor working on the kick drum, and we're actually going to do an experiment and render out the audio file here to see if we can see visually the effect of the compressor itself. So let's dial in a little compression for everything here. So that seems to be pretty good. Maybe bring the threshold up just a little bit. But you can see as the compressor is working, you'll see the bar over here showing you how much compression is actually happening. So that's giving us a really strong attack for the kick. It's really making it punch through a little bit. Now, one thing, if you noticed, looking at the decibel meters here, so this is the input, this is the output side, you can see because we've lowered volume so much on the kick, we've lost a lot of volume. So if we A-B, turning the compressor on and off, you can hear we've lost that volume. This is where makeup gain comes into play, because we want to bring it back up close to the original level of the input. So now that's given us a lot of punch, a lot of attack. There's also a couple different types of compressors you could look at as well. So this is the stock compressor. Again, it's going to give you a very clean sound. It's not going to manipulate the audio in any coloration. Now, if you look into other things, say like the Fat Channel from PreSonus, with the Fat Channel, I love this Brit comp for drums specifically. So this is going to give us just about, it's actually giving us all of the same settings here: threshold, ratio, attack, release, and makeup gain. Now the ratio, we're a lot more limited on the ratio we could look at, but let's dial in a kick sound on this one and hear that difference, the different coloration. To my ears, I love the Brit comp. Not just because it's emulating vintage gear, but it's giving it a little darker feel for it. The vibe has changed just a little bit. It sounds slightly grittier to me. And, you know, stock compressors are great, but it's more so for clean volume for things. But the coloration of that Brit comp, I absolutely love. All right, so let's go ahead and bounce this down to a new track, and that way we can see, kind of compare the waveforms and see the changes. All right, you can see here how the initial transient hit. We have a lot of tail coming down here, less, I mean, same length of tail, obviously. It doesn't shorten anything. But you can see the volume reduction, but with that makeup gain, you can see the balance of this waveform. So the quieter sections brought up louder, louder sections balanced out. So it's pretty cool to do this experiment, to bounce it out to a new track and see the way that the waveform changes. Now, again, it's nothing drastic. We're not changing the kick to a square wave, but we're affecting it enough that we can hear an audible difference, and it makes it sound better because there's punch. And then, mixed in with the whole tune, you can really get some things to stand out, really get some things to sit tight together. Compression is one of the best tools. Now, if you've stuck around to the end, I did tell you there's a special gift. I've put together a compression guide. So head over to floodwaterstudios.com/compression, drop your email. I'll send it right over to you. It's a PDF document. It takes everything that we've talked about here and just lays it out. Gives you some examples of how I set up compression settings on different sources, and just a lot of detail on the actual components, the features of compressors, and how they will set you up to nail your mixes. I hope you guys have a great day. We'll catch you on the next one. Thank you very much. Before then, go record something. See ya.